with Dubuque County Democrats, I can recommend getting involved. I worked on someone's campaign a couple years ago and met a lot of great people. I made some notes because I'm not used to talking on stage as much as Marianne Williamson or Steve. But I'm introducing her, and I will say Marianne Williamson is a best-selling author, lecturer, and nonprofit activist. She's worked with thousands of individuals in large and small groups, transforming crisis into opportunity. For 35 years, she's been helping people heal from problems, many of which have been created or exacerbated by an irresponsible political establishment. Marianne has worked throughout her career on poverty, anti-hunger, and racial reconciliation issues. She's advocated for reparations for slavery since the 1990s and was the first candidate in this presidential primary to make it a pillar of her campaign. In 2004, Marianne co-founded the Peace Alliance, and she supports the creation of a U.S. Department of Peace and a Department of Children and Youth. Before I finish, I'd like to include a couple of her most famous quotes, or ones that are meaningful to me. The first is, "Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure." I think the key relevancy to politics today in this is that it inspires us to be and make and build the change we want for our neighbors and our country, not just by electing one new leader, but the continued work that needs doing and the responsibility that we take as citizens. We are not inadequate in the face of what is needed. We have what is needed. And the second, anger is like the white sugar of activist energy. It gives adrenaline in the short term, but it's debilitating in the long term. Love is the nutrition of the gods. Is that right? And to me, I think that it means that's what will carry us through in the long term, because the hard work that needs doing is for the long haul. It cannot be sustained on frustration, fear, or anger, because that is exhausting. It must be sustained on something longer lasting and life-giving. And to me, that's one of the most important things Marianne brings to the presidential race and as a leader. But hear for yourself, Marianne Williamson.
Okay for the people there, or how should we do it? It seems up here is so high. But then that person over there, tell me, how does that person feel about this? Am I okay? Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. It's very exciting. You know, this is such an amazing thing, because when you go to California, you feel you're in the place where there's the power of the entertainment industry. When you go to New York, you feel you're in the center where there's the power of the financial business. When you're in Houston, you feel you're in the center of the power of the oil industry. And boy, when you're in Iowa, it's really interesting, the power center of American politics. And it's a real honor, because you know, you really feel it with all of you who are Iowa voters. You're very aware of the power that you hold. You hold power that is extremely consequential, possibly even consequential for the world. And it's very moving, because you get a sense here that you're very aware of that. And it's a really good thing, too. It's a democratic thing. And when I'm talking about democratic, I mean democracy, not a political party. Because you are the ones who should be making the decision. It is not MSNBC, it is not CNN, it is not Fox, it is not the DNC, it is not the political establishment, and you're aware of that. The decision is in your hands. So you have a lot of really good candidates this year. I'm not running against anyone. I'm running with a lot of really good, smart people. I'm just very grateful. I know that you're having to listen to a lot of people. That's your due diligence. You should be listening to everybody. You've got time before you make, well, some of you might have made your decision or whatever, but the point is you're taking in a lot, you're reflecting a lot, I'm sure, and processing a lot. So again, my thanks for giving me this opportunity to tell you how I see things. The one thing about which we all agree is the importance of replacing Donald Trump in the White House. I have some ideas about how we need to do that, which are somewhat different than other political candidates. I heard one person who's running on television the other day say that he's going to prove that Donald Trump is a fraud and a liar. And I laughed and I thought, to who? Like, who doesn't know this? And another person who talking about how they're going to prosecute a case against him. Once again, to who? Because let's talk reasonable math here. First of all, the people who absolutely love and support Donald Trump, no matter what, they're going to vote for him. They're going to vote for him. There's no reason to spend even 15 more minutes on them. There's no reason to spend 5 minutes. They're going to vote for Donald Trump. Okay, then there's another group who, no matter who the Democrat is, they're going to show up and they're going to vote for the Democrat. That's great, but we actually don't need to spend 5 minutes more on them either, because that's kind of a done deal. The problem we have is that those two groups are too close for comfort in terms of their numbers. Now, Donald Trump did not win last time just because of the people who were so gung-ho about him, and he won't win next time if he were to win, only because of the people who are so gung-ho for him. So as I see it, this is what we need to do. We have three categories we have to think about. One, all the people who did not vote last time. That's number one. Number two, the millions of people, and I feel very strongly about this, the millions of people who did vote for the president, but they're uncomfortable. They don't feel real good about this. But I'll tell you something, ladies and gentlemen, if all we do is go on and on about how bad he is, that's like scolding them. Our message is that it's your fault. And that will not make them want to embrace us either. That is a huge point. I believe, with all due respect, that one of the mistakes that Hillary made was talking about Trump too much. We should have heard more about how good she is and the good things she was going to do. And then the other group we have to think about also are those people who voted third party last time. So one of the things, part of this perfect storm that we had last time, was also the misreading of how angry people were. I think the Republican Party, in a way, was gobsmacked by Donald Trump, and in a way, the Democrats were gobsmacked by Bernie Sanders. And that is because both had failed to register what both of those men did register, and that's how angry people were. Let me go on record by saying people had every reason to be angry. People felt the system was rigged against them, and they were right about that. They were not wrong. But there are some Democratic candidates who think that the way we should deal with that now is to play to all that anger now. And I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen, that's not the way to go. That was the emotional tenor 2 years ago. And I read it. I travel all over this country for a living. I knew how angry people were. And I had a very strong feeling that only someone who was actually speaking to that anger and voicing that cry of despair, whether on an authoritarian level such as Trump or a progressive level such as Bernie, was going to win. It's not that I don't feel Hillary Clinton cared. I think she is a woman of great compassion and did and does care. The mistake, as I saw it, was that she did not name that rage. People want to feel seen, they want to feel heard, they want to feel that their feelings are validated. Now, we're in a different moment now. The emotional tenor of this moment is not rage. The emotional tenor of this moment is exhaustion. People are exhausted. The last thing they want to sign up for is a year of fighting. And what it will do is make them throw up their hands. You know, so many times Democrats don't understand why we're not winning, given that we stand for the policies that do the most to help people. But I've been saying for a very long time, the part of the brain that rationally analyzes an issue is not always the part of the brain that decides who to vote for, or even the part of the brain that decides whether or not to vote. What we need to provide to the American people is inspiration. What we need to provide to the American people is not just a way to voice their rage, a validation of their rage to be sure, a validation of the point that they know to be true, that this economy has been rigged against them for a long time. But I want to be someone who makes it clear to people, yes, it's true, it did happen. And yes, it's true that we're in big trouble because of it. Yes, it's true, millions of Americans live in chronic economic anxiety every day. Yes, it's true that our planet is in a state of disrepair that is so profound that if we don't show up for this in a radical way over the next 12 years, we could be experiencing a level of social collapse within 20 years unseen in the modern era. Yes, it is true that millions of American children live in chronic trauma. Yes, it's true that in the richest country in the world, there should not be 13 million hungry children. Yes, it's true that millions of American children go to school in classrooms that don't even have glue sticks and paper, that can't read by the age of 8 because the classroom doesn't have the adequate school supplies, that if they do not learn to read by the age of 8, the chances of high school graduation are decreased and the chances of incarceration are increased. Yes, it's true, Black Americans. It is a terrible issue that there is racial disparity in criminal sentencing. Yes, mass incarceration is an evil. Yes, it is true, I believe, that the United States does have a debt to pay, and it is time to pay reparations for slavery, and it is time to pay reparative measures and take reparative measures regarding Native Americans in Iowa and elsewhere. And yes, it is true. Our national security agenda is not driven solely by our military needs. I believe the U.S. military should get every dollar they say they need. But you and I have to wake up, because our national military budget is not just based on what the military says they need. Hundreds of billions of dollars above that are based on what defense contractors say they want. Yes, it is true that we don't have universal health care because the health insurance companies and the big pharmaceutical companies have stood in the way. Yes, it's true that we haven't taken the measures that we need to take in terms of repairing this earth because oil and gas, fossil fuel companies, chemical companies, and so forth stand in the way. Yes, it's true not only that we don't have proper health care, but that we are not as healthy a society as we should be because of the way we are obsessively addicted to short-term profits, not just for health insurance companies and big pharmaceutical companies, but also food companies and chemical companies. All the ways that a corporate aristocracy has taken hold of us. Anyone who is worried that we have reverted to an aristocratic paradigm, you're right. Anyone who's worried that, hey, why did we fight that off in 1776 if we're going to acquiesce to it today, they're right. Anybody who thinks, oh, this is time, this is going too far, this is a form of economic tyranny, they're right. But ladies and gentlemen, we need to deliver it not as, we will go to Washington, express your rage. We need to present a leader who will say, you're right, it is that bad, but we're going to fix it because we're Americans. And it's going to take us some time, and it's going to take us some hard work. But we are the heirs of a legacy of greatness, not only in the establishment of this country, but in people who dedicated their lives to the fullest actualization of what it means to say that all people are created equal, what it means to say that God gave all of us inalienable rights to life and to liberty and the pursuit of happiness, and what it means to say that we are a government of the people and by the people and for the people. And we are going to push back, and we are going to turn around, and we are going to course correct. The abolitionists did that in response to slavery, and women's suffragettes did it in response to the suppression of women, and the civil rights movement did it in response to segregation and the institutionalized white supremacy of the American South, and we are going to do that too. That's all the people want to know. They want to know, do you get how messed up it is? And the Democratic Party should stand for, yes, we get how messed up it is. But we need to present to people something so much more emotionally sophisticated at this point than, I'll go to Washington and I fight for you. Because you know what a lot of people feel? Yeah, we've heard that one before. We need to wake up. As Democrats, we need to wake up. We need to have greater respect. You know, it's interesting because the Republicans have the elitist policies, but they have an oddly more egalitarian relationship with their own constituency. Democrats have the egalitarian policies, but almost a more elitist relationship to its own constituency, including people of faith. An evangelical preacher ran up to me at an airport in San Jose, California, the other day. He said he was an evangelical preacher from Indiana. And he said, Miss Williamson, I'm a big fan of yours. He said, I want you to know a lot of us are big fans of yours. And then he looked at me, he said, Miss Williamson, I'm sorry, it's just last time we felt we didn't have a choice. It just felt like we were so looked down on. a lot of people of faith in this country do feel looked down on by a Democratic Party that has become so over-secularized, not in its heart, but in its language, in its messaging. Look, I'm a left-wing Democrat. There's no question for me about where we do stand and where we should stand. But I'll tell you something, ladies and gentlemen, I have come to understand why a lot of people don't really see us for who we are. And the problem is not with Democrats, but the problem is with a layer of Democratic establishment who treats the rest of us in a very paternalistic way. They've got this, and they're doing it to us this time. Get out of the way, toe the line, we got this. Really? You got this? Because I thought we lost last time. I thought we had the most qualified candidate in the history of our country. We lost last time. And you still going to stay just with the only problem was the Russians and James Comey? I don't think that's the way for the Democrats to go. I think the Democrats should stand for something else. We should stand for the idea that we need to end an aberrational chapter in American history. It has been going on for 40 years. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, there are ways and there have been times when Democrats have conspired with this. It's a massive transfer of wealth. Where I come from, it's called theft. It's a massive transfer of wealth into the hands of a very, very few people. Ever since, and this certainly was not the Democrats, this was the Republicans big time, and the Republicans have been consistent about it. Really just allowing this whole trickle-down economic theory to poison, to corrupt our government, turning our government into a handmaiden to this new corporate aristocracy. It hasn't been money that's trickled down from a stockholder class and lifted all boats. It is something that has destroyed our middle class and left millions and millions of people without a life vest. It is something that has given 1% of our population the ownership of over 90% of our wealth. We need to recognize the human suffering that has emerged from this. The millions of people who cannot every single day, they cannot get out of their terrible anxiety. Millions of Americans who don't know what will happen if they get sick. Millions of Americans who don't know what will happen if one of their kids gets sick. Millions of Americans who don't know what will happen how they'll send their kids to college. And millions of Americans who don't know what they will do to get out from under these college loans. When Carrie described my career, she pointed out that I've lived a career for 35 years where I've been up close and personal with the pain and the suffering of people whose lives are at the effect of bad public policy. And this is what I know. This is what I know. I know that if you want to be a rich country, if you want to be a peaceful country and you want to be a peaceful planet, this is what you do. Uncap people's dreams. Unleash people's spirits. We should stand for an entirely different paradigm of economics. Right now, we say, let economic principle guide your society, and then we'll be able to take care of all those humanitarian things. I say, let humanitarian principles guide your society, and then both the state of our humanity and the state of our economy will be in a better place. Why? Because I'll tell you where money comes from. And when I tell you this, I want you to think about your own dreams, and I want you to think about the dreams of your own children. This is where money comes from. It comes from the creativity and the productivity of the American people. Let people live their dreams. Help people manifest what they would really want to do if they could do anything. Help people be in a situation so that they're not anxious every day about health care, so that they're not going to jobs they hate just to get the health care, so that they're not worried every day about all the things that I mentioned. And you know what's going to happen? They're going to be better spouses. They're going to be better friends. They're going to be better employers. They're going to be better employees. They're going to have time and energy left at the end of the night to read that story to the little child that's saying, Mommy, Daddy, would you read a story to me? But Mommy and Daddy are so exhausted after that day at work, or sometimes 2 jobs at work, they hardly even know how to be there for their partner, much less be there for their kids. And then we wonder how are we going to treat mental health crises? Stop making everybody crazy. Stop with the public policy that has everybody so anxious and so tense, and then everybody's so anxious and tense, and we talk about what to do for this mental health crisis, and we need to face the fact that even the Democratic Party, as much as the Republican Party, knows that even there's all that dark money, because big pharma has no problem with that whatsoever. Can we wake up? Are we fools? At what point do the American people step in? At what point do the American people step in and say, hey guys, really nice that you want to give us health care, because we need it. And I'm much closer to Bernie and Elizabeth than I am to Pete and Amy, I can tell you that. But we need to do so much more than just provide health care. We need to be asking, why are we so sick? Why are Americans experiencing a level of chronic illness so much higher than our counterparts in other advanced democracies? I'll tell you why that's not on the table to discuss. I'll tell you why that's not on the debate stage. I'll tell you why they make absolutely sure that anybody who would bring up the real stuff gets sidelined as quickly as possible. Because if we were to do that, then we'd have to talk about the fact that we have so dejuiced the FDA. We have so dejuiced the FDA, just like we dejuiced the FAA, getting so cozy with Boeing, so you have those Boeing MAX disasters. We dejuiced the FDA so that the Sackler family and predatory pharmaceutical companies could do whatever they wanted to do with all that OxyContin that then turned into such an opioid crisis. And the FDA has been so dejuiced that food companies and chemical companies are acting in ways that have formed contaminants in our water, carcinogens in our food, runoff in your water in Iowa, and people ask why we're so sick. Oh, I take it back. We're actually not supposed to ask why we're so sick, but we ask, pretty please, could we please have health care? Ladies and gentlemen, it's rotten. It's corrupt. That's not a moment to scream up and down, anger, anger, anger. It's a moment for us to be really adult, to look at each other, and to admit something that's very difficult, but which this generation needs to wake up to. A government of the people, by the people, and for the people is perishing from the earth. Now, we're not asked to die on a battlefield at Gettysburg, although many, many thousands did. And they did, Abraham Lincoln said, so that government of the people, by the people, for the people would not perish from the earth. What we're asked to do is to wake up and own what we know. See, this is the thing. I haven't said anything tonight everybody here doesn't know. See, that's the thing. There are times in life, and I know this in my own career because I've been talking about so many of these things for years. Sometimes it's about, wake up. Didn't you know this? You need to see this. That's not the moment we're living in. This is a moment when we have to say to each other, we really need to do something. It's time to show some courage. Because at this point, if you think that little one over there, we can just assume that the same political establishment that drove us into the ditch that we're in, they're the only ones qualified to drive us out of this ditch. Are we believing that and acting truly responsibly towards that gorgeous baby over there? I don't think so. I think it's time for us to realize that the American Revolution is an ongoing process. You can't establish a democracy. You can't establish a democracy and just consider it done. That was our mistake. Could we say, hey, listen, I was really healthy in 2013, so I didn't think I had to think about my health after that. We can't say, I went to the gym and I was really in good shape in 2015. I didn't think I had to think about it after that. If you don't take care of your business, you might lose your business. If you don't take care of your marriage, you might lose your marriage. You don't take care of your health, you might lose your health. And you don't take care of your democracy, you might lose your democracy. And the founders did not say, oh, just turn it over to a political elite. The founders did not say, just turn it over to a political establishment, or for that matter, even political parties. The founders said, it's in your hands. But it's not in our hands if it's not in our head. It's not in our hands if it's not in our hearts. We have been infantilized. We have been infantilized. And we should not have to feel that calling the system out on this is antithetical to being a good Democrat. We should feel that calling the system out like this is what it means to be a good Democrat. See, I grew up at a time, Bobby Kennedy, Martin Luther King. I was a child when King died, but I was old enough, I was 11, I was 16. I was old enough to know what was going on. What has happened to us? You know, when I was a kid, remember Stepford Wives? Remember when that whole thing, we become Stepford citizens. They're even telling us what issues to talk about. That really kills me. It's not, it's unbelievable. If they poll you, do they ask you what you care about? Or they mention several things and you can tell them which of those several things you care about. Don't you think it's kind of shocking? We're not really having a conversation about the military budget, or the real issues of foreign policy. Well, Tulsi and I are, but isn't it odd, the two women who talk about inconvenient things, smeared, mischaracterized? I wonder what that's about. Could every woman in this room just have a sisterly moment here? And so I believe that we need some rambunctiousness, which when I was growing up was associated with the Democratic Party. You know, Will Rogers said, I'm not a member of any organized party, I'm a Democrat. It's a good thing, not a bad thing that we're so many voices. I'm someone who thinks that the fact that there's so many candidates is healthy. It's healthy for the Democratic Party, it's healthy for our democracy. As someone running myself, they've all said good things. And every time one of the candidates says something good or smart, I think it ups the game for everybody else. People say, oh, we got to shut this thing down. We got to narrow this thing. Excuse me, I'll tell you who's supposed to shut it down and narrow it. You are. That's people say, well, how are we supposed to narrow it down? I say, it's called primaries. That's what primaries are for. That's what primaries are for. It's supposed to be an election. This political aristocracy thing is not what's supposed to be happening, where there's a political establishment of unelected people except by their club. And we know where it got us last time. If the DNC had just kept their finger off the scale, instead, it has to be her. I'm someone who believes that if they just kept their fingers off the scale, either Bernie would have won or Hillary would have won, but we all would have felt good about it. We would have felt, well, that's the one who won, and I think everybody would have shown up, and Trump would not be president today. Today, they're doing the same thing. Oh, it's rebranded and repackaged as an open process. No, it's not. Last time it has to be her. This time, oh, okay, it can be one of the six. This reality show, television empire, the debates. That's all it is, ladies and gentlemen. It's just TV. It's the debate and then they're mixed with their corporate media, and they make it a big night on TV. And it has very dangerous, corrosive effects on our democracy. Because then everybody else, whether it's an LGBTQ forum or a climate change forum or J Street forum, they say, well, only having people who were in the debates, which creates this illusion that only they are running. Well, you know what, ladies and gentlemen? We have a last bastion of democracy against that nonsense, and that last bastion is sitting in this room. It's the voters in Iowa, and the voters in New Hampshire, actually. Definitely Iowa, definitely New Hampshire. By the time it gets to Nevada and South Carolina, it will be a little less. Somebody's got to stand up and say, we will be listening to the candidates, thank you. We will be thinking for ourselves, thank you. And we will caucus for who we want. Now, if you know who you're going to vote or caucus for, I respect that. If you're still in process, I respect that. I'm just asking that you hold with me the democratic vision of people who are making our own decisions and governing our own country. You know, in the Constitution, political parties aren't even mentioned. And George Washington warned us against them. Now, I'm cool with political parties, and I'm a Democrat, but I'll tell you this. The role of a political party should be to facilitate democracy, not dictate democracy. What our political establishment has done is to infantilize the American voter. We've been turned into poker chips. How many do you have? How many do you have? And they figure out, ooh, you're gay. This is what I'm going to say to you. Ooh, you're black. This is what I'm going to say to you. Ooh, you're a woman. This is what I'm going to say to you. I'm not doing any of that. I say the same thing whether you're rich or you're poor. I say the same thing whether you're black or white or brown. I say the same thing whether you're gay or straight or fluid. I am talking to you as an American. We have to have an American conversation. We have to shift something very profound. This country is now organized according to economic principle. You can either make economics your bottom line, or you can make democracy your bottom line. You cannot make both. And the idea that economic principles should run us is not what this country was founded on. Humanitarian principles should run us. We should not be run like a business. We should be run like a family. And every woman in this room should make sure of it. First, you feed the babies. Our economy is good. For who? We have 13 million hungry children in the United States. How is this possible? We have this immoral way that primary funding for our educational system is according to property taxes, which means that if a child is not as financially advantaged as some other children, their education will not be as high quality. Now, I know that in Iowa, the state does a lot to compensate for that, but I'm sorry, you're kidding yourself if you think that, oh, everything's okay now, because I hear as many teachers running up to me in Iowa as in any other state saying, I wasn't trained to handle behavioral problems. I wasn't trained to handle all the trauma of these children. You know, my dear friends, and they are, I love all these people who are running, but I'll tell you something, the whole gang of them, they're talking like it's 1986. No, it's not enough just to give more money to teachers, which we must do. It's not enough just to lower class size, which we must do. It's not enough just to get rid of high stakes testing, which we must do. And it's not even enough to just give universal preschool, which we must do. Ladies and gentlemen, some of these children are traumatized before preschool. We need community wraparound services. We need trauma-informed education. We need anti-bullying. We need violence prevention. We need conflict resolution. We need restorative justice. We need mindfulness in the schools. You know, all those things the 21st century is about. You see, what I find in every area, whether it has to do with children, whether it has to do with peace building, our entire military, our entire national security agenda is based on endless preparation for war. You can't just take medicine. You have to also cultivate health. And you can't just prepare for war. You also have to cultivate peace. But we spend so much more money on military than we spend on peace building. Peace building agencies get like a fraction because there are no corporate profits in waging peace. So, ladies and gentlemen, I don't find a problem with the American people. The American people are just fine. Like I said, I didn't say anything here you don't already know. The American people is not the problem. In every single area, we're regenerative. That's who we are. We were born of new things. That's what Americans do. There are people who know what to do for these children in Iowa and all over this country. There are people who know what to do for our environment in Iowa and all over this country. There are people who know how to build peace domestically and internationally in Iowa and all over this country. But we have a government which, because it does more to advocate for short-term profits for huge corporate entities than it does to advocate for us, is not supporting those people. And you don't kid yourself and think the Democratic Party is doing all that much better. I served on an anti-poverty organization, nonprofit, one of the best, and I have some really sad news for every Democrat. I said, what's the difference between the Obama administration and the Bush administration? And I was speaking to the executive director of an anti-poverty organization. Do you know what his answer was? The Obama administration returns our calls. That's why so many people don't vote for us. They don't think we mean it. They've had too much of experience. Yeah, gone with you guys. It didn't really change. It kills me the way Democratic candidates are always talking about working families. Do you know how many families don't have work? They're always talking about the middle-class families. What about the lower-class families? Well, do you know how many people hear Democratic candidates talk about what we're going to do for the middle class and think, I wish I could be middle class? But too many politicians think, well, they're not going to vote anyway. Well, they're not going to be able for you. You know, one of the things that I've learned traveling this country, and I've not only traveled geographically, I've also traveled socioeconomically, is that no group of Americans has a monopoly on values, and no group of Americans has a monopoly on intelligence. And there are a lot of people in this country who have very little, but that doesn't mean they're not smart, and that doesn't mean that they don't know when they're being screwed. And that doesn't mean when they don't know that they don't know and they're just hearing one more promise. And in some, what you and I would see as a dysfunctional, but still in its own way, legitimate way, they rebel by refusing to vote. Let's get them back. But we can't get them back by just parroting the same old stuff. They're not buying it. Get it? We need to be real. The only thing that will override Donald Trump's big lies is some big truth. The president has ushered in an era of political theater. We will not be going back. He's not just a politician. He's a phenomenon, and we have to create a phenomenon of our own. Our phenomenon is not any one human being. We don't believe in that. That phenomenon is an uprising among the American people, where we know what we know, and we're not going to be quiet about what we know. And we don't care what they say about us, that we know what we know. And we know that if enough of us are together, and enough of us make demands, and enough of us make demands of the people who theoretically are the ones voicing our feelings, then we will speak of love, unabashedly. We will speak of love for our children. That means we're not okay with a child going hungry in the United States. We will speak of love for our children. We're not okay for the American school and classroom to be anything other than a palace of learning and culture and the arts. We love this earth so much, we will repair it, and we will do what it takes. And we love our democracy so much that we will push back against all assaults against it. And we love the people of the world enough that we will not be okay with America losing all its moral leadership around the world with shady deals with Saudi Arabian princes by which we give aerial support to genocidal wars. It would make our grandparents roll over in their graves that Trump is doing it, and I believe it would make their grandparents roll over in their graves that you and I are saying nothing. The Democratic Party should stand for more than plans and policies. The Democratic Party should stand for the greatest spirit that is risen, that's risen up in our history. It rose up in the abolitionists, it rose up in the women's suffragettes, and it rose up in the civil rights movement. It was people who said about forces that would assault everything that this country is supposed to stand for, stop right there, and they meant it. It was people who said yes to possibilities as yet unseen. It was people who remembered that there have been people throughout our history who knew that democracy is not a small game. Democracy is a big game, and we are big enough to play it. Thank you very, very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm honored. Thank you.